Hello to the Martians and Venusians tuned into today's episode. I'm your host, Mademoiselle Venus. Welcome back to this channel, and I want to welcome myself back to this channel with this episode. I apologize for my hiatus from this channel. I've had a lot of things going on for me in my personal and professional life, and I just got sucked in, man. It sucks, honestly, because this is all I really want to do besides writing fiction. And hopefully you guys can support me and give me the opportunity to monetize this channel and the content that I'm producing here. Anyway, so today's episode is about introversion and extroversion, and I thought I would do a deep dive, and I truly did. I recorded some videos where I dove in so deep that I started losing track of time, and I realized this content needs to be short because what you're looking for is clarity, and I don't want to confuse you with a lot of nuances because honestly there's a lot that can be said about introversion and extroversion, but my focus remains that I want to give you the clarity that you need in order to figure out your personality type. Before I get into resolving this conundrum for you, which is whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, I understand the frustration and the stress you feel if you're new to the Myers Briggs typing system, you're trying to figure out whether you're an I or an E, because all those goddamn tests, they force you to choose one of the two dichotomies, right? And the quizzes, the questions are structured around introversion and extroversion, and this can be incredibly frustrating because all of us can do everything, right? If we go by the stereotypical definitions of introversion and extroversion, introverts like to be quiet, they're socially awkward, and by contrast, extroverts like to live it up, they're out there, they're very comfortable socially, and they can pick up on social cues, etc. And let me tell you that this definition is not going to help you. It's not entirely inaccurate, right? It's like a juxtaposition, right? Two states, two opposing states can exist together at the same time, and that is possible. And yes, you are an ambivert. All of us are ambiverted, right? Because think about it, if you were truly an introvert, you'd go insane listening to your thoughts, having no outside feedback, and you'd be highly cut off. You'd be highly depressed, cut off from everyone, and you would go insane at some point, right? And if you were an extrovert, living it up, partying all the time, where the hell do you get all that energy from, right? You're going to get burnt out eventually. So yes, all of us are ambiverted. We need to interact with the outside world, which is extroversion, and we also need to withdraw, go within ourselves and reflect or introspect on whatever the hell we're doing with our lives, right? So we are ambiverted. I'd also like to address, if you wrote that my last video caused, the one on the INTJ INFP relationship dynamic here on this channel. Yes, the content was anecdotal. I should have forwarded the content by saying that, but the information was strengthened by the themes that were elaborated by the socionics system, which is the Russian equivalent of the Myers Briggs system. And I know the lettering works very differently, but just keeping that aside, there is this element of posturing in an INTJ INFP relationship, okay? And that's simply because of the two dichotomies, right? Of thinking versus feeling, where each type is trying to overcompensate for their shortcomings, right? Or their insecurities, with the INFP trying to overdo their logical and rational mind, and the INTJ also tries to overdo their sentimentality, and they're constantly talking about their values and how immoral other people are, things like that, okay? And it seems childish for someone who's looking from the outside. It seems like a parade, right, where they're trying to cover up for their own insecurities. Because the INTJ's strengths are the INFP's Cognitively speaking, they are the INFP's blind spots or weaknesses, and vice versa. I apologize for all this background noise. Just one more piece of commentary that I wanted to add in the INTJ INFP relationship dynamic video is that I'm just giving you all these patterns or like the overarching theme of any two MBTI types when they come together in a romantic context. I'm giving you these patterns because I just want you to be aware. I just want you to be prepared. And in case you were in a bad relationship or a relationship that confused you, right? And you were trying to piece it all together, hopefully these patterns will help you understand what went wrong, okay? And if it's a good relationship, again, these patterns will help you inform you better about what happened and why you should continue to be in this relationship. That is the only agenda I have. And I'm sorry if I offended INTJs or INFPs with my previous video, but that was my observation. It was anecdotal, but it was also informed in large part by socionics. All right, folks, the show begins now. What does introversion and extroversion mean? Let's go back to the source. Carl Jung, with his book Psychological Types, his seminal work, talked about introversion and extroversion, and the language is very dense, very abstruse, and there's a ton of words, and you can derive a ton of meanings. But on this one thing, he's been absolutely clear, right? Which is introversion is a subjective experience, a subjective mental experience. And by contrast, extroversion is an objective mental experience. What the hell does that mean? So I'm going to use some theoretical language here and then I'm going to translate it into practical terms. So just bear with me. I just want you to get the essence of what Carl Jung was saying out of reverence for Carl Jung, okay? So Carl Jung basically says that an introvert has this propensity to pull inward, to go within themselves. And when does that happen? That happens when there's an external stimulation, okay? And the stimulation that they receive is from an object. Now, this object could be a person or a thing or an activity, right? So the introvert, let's say, is sitting in a cafe and then someone just walks in with this nice fancy watch, and the introvert looks at the watch. The introvert is looking at the watch, the make of the watch, like factual information associated with the watch, right? What is the watch made of, the material that went into making that watch, and what does the dial face look like, the color of the watch, those sort of descriptors. But the introvert has a tendency to add more to the stimulation or to this stimulating object, right? Perhaps the watch reminds them of a grandparent who covets watches, who has this watch collection. And so the introvert starts reflecting on that memory, okay? Reflecting on this person, the relationship that they shared with this person, and, all the good memories and the bad memories, and then they reflect on the good memories, and then they think about the bad memories. And so you can see that the watch was the central piece, right? It was the object of stimulation, and it populated several thoughts for the introvert, and the introvert was stimulated by those memories, right? The introvert started receiving stimulation from the watch, and then the introvert pulled inward because the introvert started receiving stimulation from their own memories associated with that object of stimulation, the watch. So that's what Carl Jung talked about. So it's almost like an indulgence. Introversion is an indulgence. And theoretically speaking, extroversion is also an indulgence, but the indulgence here is different, right? The extrovert looks at the watch, doesn't pull inward as much. I mean, we can all withdraw, but the extrovert's attention is on the watch and maybe the person who's wearing the watch. So they're kind of pulling in all this information about the watch, right? What is it made of, the material, the size, the coloring, all of those things, and whether it's an expensive watch or a cheap watch. But the extrovert is also simultaneously paying attention to the person wearing the watch. How is this person walking, and is this person talking to somebody else? And so their attention goes to their environment, right? The environment becomes very stimulating to them, where they're gathering a lot of objective pieces of information about the environment itself. So it goes beyond the watch, right? They're not pulling inward because the external world is more stimulating for the extrovert, and the extrovert is trying to engage with these stimulating objects in the environment. Again, this is one type of extroversion, okay? There are different types of introversions and different types of extroversions, and I'm going to get into that shortly. So how does this translate to observable behaviors? With introverts, you can notice that there is a sort of reluctance to participate in the outside world, to receive the stimulation, right? They're not ready to receive stimulation from the outside world because they're happy receiving stimulation from within. They also have this tendency to jump to conclusions. They make a lot of assumptions, and most introverts are overthinkers because they think they know what's going on based on what has already happened, or they can explain what's going to happen in the future based on what's happening right now, okay? So since they jump to conclusions very quickly, they also have this reluctance to participate, right? Because they've already made that conclusion, like, why should I go partying, right? Like, I've seen this happen with my brother, who's an ISTJ. I've never seen him party ever, okay? And the bunch of times that he has partied, it's been under very forceful circumstances, right? Where he's had to please people from work, or some of his old acquaintances that he needed to catch up with. So the stance that he would take is that I'm not going to party because this party is going to be awful. It's going to be ridiculous. It's just going to have a bunch of drunk people that I've already met, and they're not going to tell me anything new. They're only going to repeat all the stuff that they've told me in the past. So I'm not going to participate, not just because people are going to talk nonsense, but because they're going to say things that I already know. So that's the conclusion. He doesn't even entertain the possibility that, people could have had a bunch of different experiences since he met them last, and they could talk to him about those experiences, and they could give him new insights, fresh perspectives. But no, he is an introvert, so he already forms that conclusion, and so he decides not to go to the party. So this is how the practical behavior, these are some of the observable behaviors you can notice amongst introverts, okay? They're not out there simply because they are in here making conclusions, making assumptions of what's going to happen. With extroverts, you would see that there is this openness, this eagerness, this willingness to participate in the outside world, to meet new people, to do new things, because every experience is a new experience, and they're not stimulated by their conclusions, okay, that an introvert would be drawn into. For an extrovert, there is this attitude of looking at what is outside of themselves, because that is more stimulating. And an extrovert, if you examine the lives of both introverts and extroverts, okay, and we all hit low points in our lives, right? And if you try to find out like why the introvert hit that low point, okay, how did that introvert get there? And chances are it's because the introvert didn't take enough risks, didn't make bold moves, and the introvert sort of cocooned themselves because they were afraid. They were trying to protect, they were trying to preserve their energy. And by contrast, if you look at an extrovert, they probably got to that low point, they hit that low point because they tried too hard. They tried everything, okay, and they squandered their energy all over, and they were all over the place, and they took too many risks. They made a lot of bold moves, and they didn't spend enough time figuring out what is it that they really wanted to do, what was meaningful to them, what was fulfilling to them, what they should have done, what they were good at, right? And again, I'm not saying that introverts are highly self-aware and extroverts are not self-aware. That's not the case. That's not what I'm trying to say here. This is not black or white. But chances are that introverts are definitely, they're not risk takers, and extroverts are risk takers. And introverts miss out on a lot of opportunities, and extroverts take on too many opportunities. Why? Because they like to get that instant feedback from the outside world, right? And with an introvert, they don't want to be the object that provides the stimulation. They just want to be able to receive that stimulation, because they are very guarded with their energy, right? They want to preserve it, and they just don't want to lose it, because they're getting all their stimulation from within. Introverts also tend to prefer one-on-one conversations, right? Two's company and three's a crowd. But with extroverts, the more the merrier. In summary, for introverts, they are looking for guidance from within themselves, okay? They are their own North Stars in order to navigate the chaos that exists in the external world, okay? And this could look really, really simple as do I want to drink coffee or do I want to drink tea, right? There's two options presented to them. This introvert goes out to a cafe with their friends, and the introvert is checking in with themselves, asking what their preference is, okay? So even though the other people in the group are all drinking coffee, right? So this is one type of introversion. So I'm just trying to give you an example of what it looks like. And for extroverts, the outside world becomes their North Star. That's not to say that an extrovert is going to comply with whatever the group is doing. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that they look for guidance from outside of themselves, okay? They're trying to reach out. They're trying to see what's out there, okay? Versus an introvert who's going inward to check what's in here, right? Let's look at the different types of introversions and extroversions. So there's more flavoring to your understanding of what introversion can look like and what extroversion can look like. Like I said, it's an indulgence, right? So we'll start off the list with INTPs and ISTPs, and their primary introverted indulgence is checking for logic, okay? This is what I'm hearing from the external world. Is it making sense to me? Does it sound sensible? Is it true or is it false? And they're constantly trying to verify the information. They're trying to refine the information, trying to understand what every word actually means. Again, an example for this would be I was talking to an INTP, and I said this in the previous in one of the episodes. But is this INTP that I was talking to? And he would just keep asking me a lot of questions. If I called him a friend, he'd be like, what does friendship mean? How am I your friend? Things like that, where he's trying to understand the meaning of what I'm saying. So that's how their introverted process can look for them, right? They just pull inward, and they're trying to answer all of these questions. And they're also extroverting by asking you these questions and trying to get in more data from you. And so that's the simulation that they're receiving, right? Questions, answers, more questions, more answers, and question the answers, right? So why? Because they want to get to that source. They want to get to that unadulterated truth, okay? Without any refinement. They want to understand the world by asking questions. Next up, we have INTJs and INFJs, and their primary indulgences, they're trying to figure out what the hell is actually going on, okay? They're trying to get to the truth of something, which is also very similar to what an INTP or ISTP is doing, right? But it's just slightly more nuanced here, where they're trying to gather, they're looking at all the factual pieces of information, the TLDR version of an event, and they're also trying to examine the reasons, the why of the event. Why did this happen, right? And there could be a million reasons why something happened, but they are trying to sort of boil the ocean for a cup of salt. So they're trying to figure out that one reason that one primary reason that triggered everything. Okay, and just to give you some example, there's this INTJ that I've been talking to for a week now, and I explained to him how I've been having some trouble with uploading more content on this channel. I gave him some reasons for my procrastination, one of them being that I am not motivated enough and I only do things when I feel motivated. And I also told him that the past couple of months I've been super tied up with a crazy schedule, both in my personal and professional life. And so the INTJ was hearing all of this out, and I also told him that I also had this crazy routine last year where I would wake up at 4 a.m. in the morning and just go for a run. Okay, and I did that consistently for a year, and that's a lot for an INFP, okay, to stick to a routine. So please give me credit here. So the INTJ heard me out, and he just took a moment and he said, look, the reason why you're not making a lot of content is because you're not feeling inspired, you're not feeling motivated. It's not because you're not able to juggle multiple things. That's not the case. So that gave me some perspective and helped me understand, there's many reasons why I haven't been taking action, but actually it's about inspiration, because when I feel inspired, I can move mountains. Next on the list, we have ISFPs and INFPs, and they're paying attention to their preferences, their likes, their dislikes. It's as simple as that. Just what I'm doing, does it feel good? Does it line up with my preferences, my values? Do I like this? Do I not like this? Those are the kind of questions that ISFPs and INFPs get pulled into, and that's why to an outsider, it can look like ISFPs and INFPs are incredibly selfish or self-centered, because they're always drawn into these questions and their self-absorption comes up this way. The last pair of introverts are ISTJs and ISFJs, and they're primarily paying attention to their comfort. Okay, and how do they get that sense of comfort? It's by doing things that they are familiar with. And that's why you notice that ISTJs and ISFJs, they have set routines, okay? My dad is an ISFJ. He drinks coffee only on Sundays, okay? Why? I don't know, because it's just a ritual. Like he drinks coffee only on Sundays. Maybe he used to do that when he was a kid. And so he has a lot of childhood memories around that event. And so he continues to follow it to this day, right? He rides his motorcycle only on Sundays. And to me as an INFP, it's kind of bizarre because I am super moody. I'm always doing things that I feel like doing, right? But he does things according to his set routine. And so ISTJs and ISFJs, they are highly risk averse. They don't like shaking things up. They like to follow a set routine, doing conventional things, right? Okay, moving to extroversion and the 4 different types of extroversions. I'm going to start the list with ENTPs and ENFPs. So their extroversion shows up in the way they talk. They usually talk really fast, and they're explorers, right? They're exploring metaphysics. They're usually very eager, very enthusiastic to share their views, their opinions on philosophy or anything that they've read or come across, like a video they watched. And they usually branch out to different topics, right? Ideas populate as they keep talking, right? So they think out loud, and it was funny to me when I asked a bunch of my ENTP and ENFP acquaintances about how extroversion shows up for them. They said that they feel energized when they initiate conversations with people, and they are the first ones to discuss their ideas, and waiting for others to think and initiate conversations with them costs them more energy. They feel drained out. Okay. Okay, ESTPs and ESFPs, they are the ultimate realists. Okay, they live in the moment. They are connected to this real world, where they're absorbing the sights, the smells, and the sounds. Just to reference the movie This is Spinal Tap. They truly practice mindfulness. Okay, so the watch example that I gave you, an ESTP or an ESFP is sitting down in a cafe, and then somebody walks in with a big fancy watch. The ESTP and the ESFP is going to notice the watch, is going to notice the make of the watch, the material that was made out of, how big the dial face is, etc. And then they're also tuning in to the person wearing that watch. Okay, what is the body language of that person, and then what's going on in the environment, basically. So that's their extroversion, right? They're present in the moment, and they're gathering information about the environment that they are in. Okay, so ESTPs and ESFPs can look like the stereotypical extroverts. They get energized by meeting new people, by going to parties, by having a good time. Next up, we have ENFJs and ESFJs. They are paying attention to the people in their environment. What is their mood like? They are tuned into to the emotional milieu of the environment. Okay, and why are they doing this? They want to bring some sort of harmony. And how do they bring this harmony? They want to align their behaviors, their attitudes, their opinions. They want to adjust all of that to the group, so that there's harmony. Okay, so that's how their extroversion shows up, where they would come, they would be warm, personable, they would try to make you feel comfortable, and they would take an active interest in your life, in trying to understand you, in trying to understand what's going on for you, and they would try to be as helpful as they possibly can. And lastly, we have the sexiest pair of extroverts on the list, ESTJs and ENTJs. And why they're sexy to me? Because they get the job done, and that's their extroverted attitude, right? They just like to break down every task into mini tasks, and they get feedback from completing those mini tasks. And that is their simulation, and that's how you would see their extroverted behaviors in taking action. Okay, that is the primary indicator. Someone who doesn't waste time, who doesn't beat around the bush, just gets to it. That is their extroverted attitude, and that's why they are sexy. Alright, that's a wrap. Until next time, what did I tell you? Don't get complacent. Love you, love me, love Mademoiselle Venus.